4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the gentleman from Arizona for yielding, and want to thank my friends across the aisle for their support of a common sense piece of legislation that, again, rights a wrong perception from the U.S. Court of Appeal. Mr. Speaker, many of us in this institution do talk about how we are a nation of laws. But unfortunately, on June 7th, when the U.S. Court of Appeals handed down its decision, they ruled that we're not a nation of laws. We are a nation of laws, but not a nation of rules and regulations, at least as it applies to federal workers. We've had a good discussion about the case. Dr. Timothy Rainey, and just to maybe summarize again, he's a State Department employee who was asked to violate the federal acquisition regulation, and he didn't want to do it. So he denied, and he invoked his right to disobey under the Whistleblower Protection Act. This was brought to the Merit System Protection Board, and they ruled against Mr. Rainey. It was found against Mr. Rainey, Dr. Rainey. And what this did was expose a glaring inconsistency in the application of the Whistleblower Protection Act, which again is inconsistent with the intent of this institution. So we have to ask ourselves, what does this mean? Well, I chair a Financial Services Subcommittee on Oversight. Federal whistleblowers play an important role in exposing mismanagement at federal agencies and supporting the oversight that all of us do in this Congress. Critical to them is that the Whistleblower Protection Act provide federal workers with certain safeguards to disclose information that an employee reasonably believes evidences gross mismanagement, waste of funds, abuse of authority, or a violation of the law. This court ruling will take away those protections when federal employees stand up against bad actors within our federal workforce. In effect, this ruling will give permission to supervisors in positions of authority to force federal workers to violate the rules and regulations that Congress, through law, direct agencies to implement. For example, at the Treasury Department, one of the agencies that I have the great privilege of overseeing, this would mean that federal workers could be forced to violate sanctions against Russia for a violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity. Many of those sanctions are enforced through the Code of Federal Regulations pursuant to laws that are passed by this Congress. So regardless of your opinion about rules and regulations, and if that was the conversation today, I'm sure we would have a far more vigorous and a debate that was far more disagreeable, but that's not the issue. No matter what you think about rules and regulations, we should not leave exposed federal workers who simply want to follow those rules and regulations. So this bipartisan Follow the Rules Act, which again I introduced with my good friend from Virginia, Mr. Conley, will close the loophole created by the court. And what we're doing is ensuring that federal employees aren't just protected under our whistleblower statute for violations of federal law. They'll also be protected as a whistleblower if there's a violation of a federal rule or regulation. This makes sense. It closes a loophole, and I think that's why we've seen such bipartisan support from the far right of this institution and the far left of this institution. And I think this is a great bill, and I want to thank my friends for so closely working with me to garner the support.